serious. Teachers of Reddit. What is the surprisingly smartest thing your stupidest student has ever said? When I was teaching grade 5 a few years back, I had a student who really struggled academically and misbehaved a lot. During one of his punishments, which was washing dishes with me from our morning breakfast time, I straight up asked him why he kept getting into trouble. The boy admitting that he just knew that if he misbehaved he would get to spend time with me one-on-one. And we would talk about life and his hobbies and such. I found out later on that his father had been incarcerated for pretty much the entirety of the boy's life. So, the stupidest and most misbehaved kid in the class was actually just playing the system the whole time. And really just needed a positive male role model in his life. After that, I told him he didn't need to act up in order to spend time with me. He could just ask for extra responsibility and I would give it to him. He was, mostly, better behaved after that. I miss him a lot. Teachers like you are the ones that make a difference. Used to teach chess to elementary level kids. Would run chess camp over the summer. 20-40 kids come in every day for a full school day, but every period is basically a chess class. Lasts a week. On the first day, I would tell kids they need to lose to get better. Which is true in a game like chess, especially in the beginning. I would tell them you have to lose 50 games before you can improve in chess. Well, on about day 3 I'm walking from the field to the class and see one of my students, second grader, walking the other direction and ask him offhand, how's chess going? And he responds, well, I've lost all of my games so I guess I'm doing great. I teach first grade, so many not as dramatic as other replies. I had a kid who is kind of never quite paying attention. We read a dinosaur book and were answering very basic first grade questions in the back of the book. It literally had a brachiosaurus and said, the dinosaur's legs are A. long, B. short. He pretty much got stuck here and didn't move on. To me, it was the easiest question in the book, but some of the students are low-level English learners, so it is possible he just couldn't understand the words long or short. After like 7 minutes of doing my rounds and assisting other students, I came back to him. He had written in C. long and short are both opinion words. In a college music history class, we were discussing the differences in sound between a harpsichord from the high Baroque and today's grand piano. One student, who normally contributed little, said, the reason the two instruments sound so different is because harpsichord strings are plucked by quills, whereas piano strings are struck by hammers and you'd make different sounds too if plucked or struck. I'm teaching English as a foreign language and one of my students hasn't been attending for a year. When he finally came, I gave him an essay to write. He wrote it in perfect German because he thought that we were studying German. The guy had been learning German all year long only to learn that we were studying English. This is both the smartest and the stupidest thing I can imagine. In high school I took 3 years of German. And then in my senior year I switched to Italian for some reason. The same teacher taught both Italian and German. At one point during the year, we had a basic homework assignment. Just simple questions that we were supposed to write answers for. You know the type. Making sure we can read basic Italian words and respond with basic ones. I answered the entire thing in German by mistake. He did give me full marks on it because he said in order for me to do that and do it correctly, it was obvious that I was understanding the Italian, translating it to English, and then translating that to German. So it did show an understanding of the language. I had to keep reminding myself the rest of the year to make sure I was, in fact, writing in the correct language. Elementary school. I worked in the school admin office for a while. We had a cop come in to speak to the kids. Basically to warn them on the dangers of strangers and random people speaking to them in the street. The cop was great and told the kids how they should always be careful and that some bad men might take them away from their mummies and daddies. One kid puts his hand up and asks the question, so what will happen if we go with one of these stranger men? The cop wasn't prepared for that question and just said how sad it would be and how his parents would miss him. A few days later, a new buzzword was going around the school which phonetically sounded like pedophile. The kid had looked up online or spoke to someone and then told the other kids and schools about what these bad men do. It scared the hell out of some of the kids and the principal had to come to each class to calm the kids down. That kid probably did more to make sure no one left the school with a stranger than the cops. As a student, I remember my teacher telling a story in grade 12 English about the only essay he thought deserved more than 100% on a provincial exam. The subject was being independent. This student seemed to be writing a totally off-topic and garbage essay. To start, he wrote it as if in a Quebec French accent. For those of you who don't know, the stereotypical accent puts H's where there aren't any and takes them away when they are supposed to be there. For example, where instead of hair, or instead of the, it will be da or d. Anyways, this essay was about a fisher who had died while on the ocean fishing. It was written from his point of view, watching his fiancée grieve over his death. She would constantly look at his picture in a pendant he gave her for their anniversary. Eventually she started dating again and, while melancholy, he was glad for her. He watched her life grow with this new man, and as he watched through the window and she looked at his picture again, he was happy for the new man. He was happy the man made her happy. But there was something he would always have that the man wouldn't. He would forever be independent. That whole however many word essay for a single pun. I couldn't believe it. TL. Dr. Guy had the balls to write an essay, worth 30% of his grade, seemingly off topic, ending in a pun, and aced it because the teacher had a sense of humor. I have a student in my class with autism. He is very high functioning, but he is a couple years behind his grade level. We were discussing the American Revolution and one of the vocab words we had was tyrannical leader. I jokingly told the class that if I was ever the leader of the country, that's the kind of leader I would be, and I went on to say that all of your teachers would be that way too. Most of the class looked at me blankly, but this one kid with autism understood what I was saying and looked at me, and while trying to contain his laughter says, "Well, that's because all teachers have a superiority complex." I just couldn't help but laugh in front of the class for the next 5 minutes. My favorite student of all time in my 9 years of teaching was a kid named Logan. Logan was this giant kid, tall as I was, 5 feet 2, in the 5th grade. And massive. Logan also had an information processing learning disability. He processed information more slowly than most people. He spoke very slowly and deliberately with long pauses. And just saw the world differently. Logan had learned early on that if he played dumb, people would treat him like he was stupid and do his work for him. He had this look he would put on his face, mouth agape, lower lip hanging down, lid drooling, eyes unfocused, and he would refuse to speak to you. I figured that out really quickly, and after 2 times of me making him talk to me at recess when he refused in class, he didn't pull that look with me anymore. It was a complete facade. Anyway, because of how Logan processed the world, he would spend his recess slowly walking the grounds and picking up anything interesting he found. He found things no one else would find: coins, sequins, a box of sewing machine spools, etc. And he'd bring them to us teachers if he didn't know what they were or just wanted to share them with us. So one day at recess he comes up to me and the other teacher at recess duty with me. And he's holding a condom wrapper. He asks us what it is. And the other teacher quickly says, "Oh Logan, that's just a candy wrapper for grown-ups. Here, let me take that and throw it away." And Logan dead looks us in the face and says, "Oh good. I thought it was a condom. And those shouldn't be out here on the playground." And then he turned and ambled off. His emotional intelligence was incredibly high. I had a student with autism in class. Tyler. Tiny little guy. Super sweet. But would have occasional severe meltdowns. I will always have the image in my head of tiny little Tyler. Mid-meltdown. Swinging his arms at giant Logan and screaming. While Logan simply stood there and took it and gently patted him on the head. TL. Doctor, I don't care if it's too long and no one reads it. Logan was one of the best people I've ever met in my life and I have so many good memories of him. When learning mythology. Mr. If centaurs have 2 arms and 4 legs, does that make them insects? I've mentioned this before. And also it is genuinely difficult to tell who is the stupidest. Kids are smart some days and clueless others. Some grow out of it. Anyway. We were talking about cheetahs being the fastest land mammal. Some inner city kid swells up and says he can beat a cheetah in a race. The class laughs. Kid doesn't let it go. Finally he just says I can beat a fat cheetah in a race. I'm just thinking. Maybe? I hate the word in describing this kiddo. And it wasn't so much what she said. But did. She certainly wasn't stupid. But as an at-risk youth counselor I can say she was very low functioning. She went AWOL one night out of the blue. Not one staff saw her leave. Usually when this happens, kids go do dumb kid stuff like going to the park to drink and smoke, teenage stuff. Well, we didn't see her for 2 days. We finally got a phone call from a person who had taken her in, 400 some miles away. When she got back to our facility she had this nervous look. Knowing I was gonna scold her. I didn't. I was too impressed. I asked her how she did it. And she said she kept hopping buses. I guess none of the drivers had the heart to kick her off. So there she went. I took a very big risk in the fact that I congratulated her on her journey. Her eyes lit up when I told her she had managed to travel farther than any kid that had ever gone AWOL. She never did it again and actually graduated the program with success. Still a booger. But I'll always remember that booger. I don't wanna be dumb like my mama. Teacher at an inner city school for a time where almost all the students had free breakfast and lunch. Lots of the kids realized and knew they were in a no-win situation and a downward spiral in terms of education and situation in life. Quite a number of them tried their damnedest though to get out of it. Lots of times the kids don't know what is awaiting them at home. Many parents don't read to their kids or help them with homework, many just can't because they themselves barely have an education. Or they are in just bad situations. One student came in and said their mama chose to pay the cable TV bill over the hot water bill. Later the same mom chose to pay her cell phone bill over electricity. And that student had enough and decided to start studying and try to climb out. There is hope. I don't know if this counts but I was teaching a public speaking class. It was mostly 9th grade. They were all nervous about their first big speech. And I tried to ease their nerves by saying, I promise giving a speech won't kill you. Then some kid shouted, do you know how many people in history have died while giving a speech? 2 incidents come to mind. Kids, 10-11-year-olds, having a disagreement on their group assignment. I instinctively call out the troublesome kid, whose whinny voice is ingrained in my brain and is the first voice I notice. He jumps up and screams that his group are egotistical a-holes who can't even decide on a topic 2 days into their assignment. Was impressed by his vocabulary but more so that the small amount that had been done on the assignment already was completely his. Still had to send him to the principal. I was on prac in a class of 7-8-year-olds. A pair of girls gave me a drawing and said I was really pretty. Another girl who seemed to be from a lower class family compared to her classmates and had learning delays heard this and came up to me saying I don't think you are pretty. I was taken aback but kids are kids and don't always have filters. She saw the look on my face and followed up quickly saying I think you are kind and smart. Being pretty doesn't matter. Girls can be more than pretty. Are you going to stay as our teacher forever? And that was the moment I knew this profession was for me.